I'm John Hankey. This is the second oral history session with Bernard Gallagher for the DC chapter of the National Railway Historical Society. Now, you had told me one story, I think it might have been at Alexandria, about a locomotive getting into a pit.
Well, there's been several of those.
Really?
Yes. One of them in Alexandria started out with engines came into the coal chute and ash pit when they first came in before going to the roundhouse. And when they cleaned the fire and dumped the ashes out and everything, the fire knockers, as they call them, would bring the engine down to the inspection pit where they'd inspect it. Well, one of the fire knockers cleaned the fire in one of the big Mikado engines one day, and he got up to move it down to the wash rack, which was the next position so the running gear could be washed. And he got up and didn't follow the right protocol. He opened the throttle, got the engine moving, and then tried to start the air compressor. The air compressor wouldn't start, and it was downgrade from the coal chute in the inspection pit to the turntable. Unfortunately, the turntable was not sitting in the right position. The engine kept on its path there, and the fire knocker was throwing chains and old brake shoes or anything he could in front of it trying to stop it, and it didn't pay any attention at all. Somebody in the meantime had gotten the turntable lined back up, and the engine went down across the turntable into one of those radial tracks on the other side, and then down a big embankment that was right above the Alexandria National Cemetery. I hadn't gone with the Southern yet, but the old-timers told me about it, and they said at one point they had 9 of the big Mikado engines coupled together trying to pull that one up the bank, and couldn't move it, and so they finally had to jack it up a little at a time, put tires under it until they got it level and were able to drag it back out of there.
Wow. Do you know if that fire knocker kept his job?
Probably not. It was a little before I came there, but I imagine that was the end of his employment with the Southern.
I remember one story you started telling one time about the derrick.
Oh.
This was a case where there was a foreman who was in a hurry and they didn't put the outriggers out and they tipped it over. Does that sound familiar?
Oh yeah, the light pole, concrete light pole.
Oh right, yes.
Yeah, they got some concrete light poles down the station, had to move them, and the only thing they had big enough was the derrick. And it has the outriggers on the side. One of the hot shots running it, they boomed the derrick around and they were putting the outriggers out. These guys are always wasting time and all this, and just it'll be all right, you know. And he got him to pick the light pole up, and the light pole started swinging and swaying. No outriggers, the derrick turned over on the boom and broke the boom off.
Goodness. Whereabouts was this?
Down the station.
At the station?
Right outside of the station there, you know, where some of those concrete light poles were. And just the boom sticking out like that and all that, it just, when it swang, over she went.
I wonder how they picked that up then. When the crane goes over, what do you pick that up with?
They had to call the RF&P, send their derrick over. RF&P used to lend their derrick out a lot. If they get something too big for the Southern's derrick, they'd always call the RF&P crew to come go with them if they had a derailment where they needed to work it from both ends or something. You know.